Hey, what's up, everybody? This is the Octagon Daddies. I'm Dave. He's Mike. We're coming here to you for UFC 286, Edwards versus Usman. So we're going to jump right into things here tonight and start with the women's flyweight division. First matchup of Juliana Miller versus Veronica Macedo. Mike, do you want to take this one away?
Yeah, I'll start us off here. So I feel like the last few times we've done this, I've started off by saying it's kind of an exciting first fight of the night, or at least an exciting fighter to me. So Macedo, she's fighting for the first time in 3 years.
Yeah.
She's gone 1-4 in the UFC, so I think she's pretty fortunate to even get this fight, quite honestly. There's not really I can speak. There's not much I can speak to about Macedo in what she does very well. I didn't see much that really stood out.
Yeah.
She doesn't have a very high work rate, doesn't defend very well. It doesn't really utilize many takedowns. She has some decent BJJ skills. She doesn't display them very much either. Um, there's not a whole lot to like, at least on tape, for Macedo. But Miller, on the other hand, she is the tough season 30 winner, and
Yes.
to me, one of the most exciting prospects in the flyweight division by far. I loved watching her on Tough. She's really young, but she's absolutely tenacious in there. She likes
Mhm.
to pressure a lot with her takedowns, and her BJJ skills are fantastic. They're several levels above what Macedo can bring to the table. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think this is one of those things where Hardy is, excuse me, Macedo. I think she goes. I don't know if she goes by Hardy or Macedo. I've seen both names for her. Anyway, Macedo. I think she's being served up as kind of a sacrificial lamb, to be honest here. So I'd be pretty shocked if this goes to distance, and I have Miller by submission. So what do you think on this one?
Okay. I'm actually following the same lines as you. I have Miller by sub, and I think she has shown a lot more of an ability to actually dominate on the mat. I mean, she's averaging about 4.5 takedowns a fight when you include the contender series wins. Whereas Macedo is getting taken down about 50% of the time. Uh, while she does have a little bit of a ground game, her jiu-jitsu is nothing compared to Miller's. And I honestly, I know the over 2.5 rounds on this is minus 300. I actually like it under. I don't think this one sees the third round start, and I think it's Miller by sub.
I'm with you. I'm with you.
All right. And up next, we have a lightweight match of Jai Herbert versus Ludovic Klein. And I'll jump right into this one. Herbert is a very low volume striker. He is 2-3 in the UFC. All three of his losses have been by stoppage. He needs to keep this fight in the center of the octagon for him to even have like a remote chance to win. He gets taken down a little bit over 50% of the time, but he does have a huge reach advantage of 4.5 inches. He's 7 inches taller than Klein as well. Um, whereas Klein, he's on a 2-fight win streak in the UFC. He does take the fight to the mat, not as much as he probably should, given his size. Um, striking, he's a very average striker. He's not much better than what Herbert is. I think what this will come down to is who can win by points. And it's going to come down to Herbert, hopefully keeping him at length, kind of jabbing, kicking, keeping him away from him. If he can keep himself off of the mat, he'll win this one by a decision. I actually have him just taking the money line on him. It's a plus 165, so it looks pretty good. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't see it really playing out too differently. I kind of agree with your take and your analysis there. So Herbert, I think he's first Brit of the night here on the London card. So he's fun to watch because he doesn't throw a lot of volume like he said, but he's going for the knockout like every time.
Yeah.
Um, and he likes to utilize his head kick
Mhm.
to stun opponents and then kind of finish them with punches. So he is going to be looking for that. Like you said, he'll try to stay at range here, try to utilize the reach advantage. So he's pretty dangerous, even if he isn't that aggressive. He's been kind of a mixed bag in the UFC. He struggled a bit in some grappling exchanges. Um, Klein, on the other hand, he's not a high volume guy either, but for him, it seems like he's a little bit more like patient and calculated. I get that sense from him.
Yeah.
He likes to counter. Um, Unlike Herbert, though, he will shoot a takedown, can wrestle a little bit. So, I'm with you. I think this one will probably go the distance, and I think it'll probably be one on points. In that case, I they're both not very high volume. I like a guy that has a few more tools, which in this case is Klein. So I think he
Okay.
can clinch, wrestle just a little bit enough to get him the decision.
Okay. So we're off to the start where we disagree. I like it.
Hmm.
Oh, coming up next, our third fight of the night is another women's flyweight bout. It's Joanne Wood versus Luana Carolina. Mike, what do you think?
Yeah, so Joanne Wood's been in the game for a long time. She is a
Yes.
veteran. She's been so long that her name has been shortened from Joanne Calderwood to Joanne Wood. Um, she does have a lot of L's piled up on her record.
Mm-hmm.
But that being said, I mean, her competition has been pretty tough. Like she's only fought really good fighters. She
Yeah.
doesn't fight any women that are barely hanging on typically. Um, what I like about Wood is she's tough. She's always shown toughness, a good chin. She does have a high work rate. And so when she does win fights, even though she's kind of hit or miss, she does so because she usually has pretty good volume. I wouldn't classify Wood as like a very good wrestler or even much of a wrestler at all, but she has shown that she can like use her wrestling to change gears, like in an intelligent way in the
Mm-hmm.
octagon. Carolina, she's respectable 3-2 in the octagon, but she hasn't faced the same level of competition as
No,
Wood.
not at all.
So, her most recent fight, Carolina, that is, she was flattened by Molly McCann. I think it might have been like in the third round, but it was a
It
spinning
was.
back fist. Um, I'm not hugely confident in this, but I think Wood, just with her experience, fighting a lot better fighters, I think she's going to come out with the win here.
Okay. Yeah, I'm actually in the same line as you. I like Wood to win this fight. And I actually saw a prop earlier this week. The over under on significant strikes for Wood to land in the fight was 63 and a half.
Mm.
I think she hits that probably by the middle of the second round with her output. She usually comes out really aggressive and she doesn't really tire much. She's just like you said, she's fought a murderer's row. She doesn't really back down from anything. She takes anything that the UFC's thrown in front of her. She's averaging just about 7 strikes a minute, 7 significant strikes a minute, which is pretty solid to go along with 1.5 takedowns a fight. I mean, if she ends up on top, she'll be safe. She should be able to get some ground and pound in. My fear is that Carolina can shoot on her once when she gets a little over aggressive and get her on her back. She is not that great when she's on her back. She is prone to being submitted. That would be the only thing that would scare me, though. I think she'll be able to keep this one on her feet, kind of scramble out of those takedown attempts and hold her own weight, standing in the middle of the octagon. So yeah, I'm going to go Wood to win this one outright.
Good pick.
And up next, we have a flyweight match of Jake Hadley versus Malcolm Gordon. I'm going to jump right into this one. Jake Hadley, he is 1-1 in the UFC. He's an average striker when it comes to flyweights. He is not super active when these guys are usually quick and speedy. He's only averaging about 4 significant strikes a minute, which is nothing to snuff at. But he's pretty dangerous when he gets on the ground. He does have 2 wins by submission. Whereas Gordon, all 3 of his losses were by stoppage in the first round. He's a super low volume guy, only averages about 1.9 significant strikes per minute, and he only has a 9% takedown defense. If this fight is going to go any way, I think it's going to be Hadley is going to get him on the ground. And he's going to stay there. I have Hadley. I don't think he's going to win this in any other way than it going the distance. But I'd be hesitant to bet it to go the distance. I like him to win just outright, whether it be submission or distance. So that's where I'm leaning on this one, Hadley. What do you think?
Okay. Yeah, I'm kind of along the same lines there. So I think this one is probably going to be a quickie but goodie, which incidentally was Dave's nickname in college.
Oh,
But both of these guys are actually pretty good at finishing fights via submission.
yeah,
I think the biggest difference here is that Hadley's more dangerous as a striker. He's shown that he's more dangerous.
yeah.
Um, You mentioned Gordon's putrid takedown defense. And what I actually see happening in this is, Gordon will probably go for a big punch. He'll probably continue to underutilize his jujitsu like he always
Yep.
does. And, so I wish he'd be more assertive, but looking for maybe some takedowns. I don't think he's going to do it. So I actually think Hadley is going to piece Gordon up early.
Really?
And he's going to get the finish. I just don't know if he's going to actually get the finish by TKO or he's going to just hurt Gordon so badly, get him to the ground and submit him. But I don't think this goes the distance.
Okay. All right. So up next, we have a middleweight bout between Christian Leroy Duncan and Dusko Todorovic. Mike, what do you think?
Yeah, this one confused the hell out of me because we've got Christian Duncan and Chris Duncan both fighting on this
Yeah.
card. Um, I'm actually not really sure how Duncan is a favorite in this fight. Um, Look, he's undefeated as a pro, right? He's coming from Cage Warriors,
Mm-hmm.
decent promotion, but this is his first UFC fight, and Todorovic is a really big step up in competition.
Yes, he is.
The biggest concern I have for Todorovic is his chin. Honestly, he's been stunned a couple times and knocked out.
Mm-hmm.
That said, his nickname being Thunder, it's pretty appropriate for him. He's big, powerful middleweight. And actually, I don't know if you saw this. He has a win a few years back. It wasn't in the UFC. It was in another promotion, but against Michel Pereira, who is a really, really good fighter in the UFC now. I
I
mean, that
did
guy's
not notice that.
yes, yeah. And Pereira is awesome, just an awesome fighter.
Yes.
So that was really impressive to see. Duncan, he's looked great. He's looked great himself in Cage Warriors. I think he's only had like one pro fight go the distance, in
Yeah.
which he won. Cage Warriors isn't the UFC. So even though Christian Duncan, I like him, and I think he can have a solid future in the UFC. I don't think this is a great matchup for him. I don't think it's great matchmaking in general. So I'll take Todorovic.
Okay. So I was actually leaning the same way with Todorovic. Being that it's Duncan's UFC debut and he is coming from Cage Warriors, which is not, if he would have been coming from Bellator or maybe PFL, I'd probably think a little differently. It's not as big of a leap in competition. But it is a huge leap in competition. So that striking power that he has, that he's been able to win five of his 7 wins were by TKO. It may not be as much when he's up there with the big dogs. And Todorovic is a big dog. He steps into the ring and he's looking to knock you out. I don't think there's any other way that he wants to finish a fight. He wants to rip your head off. All 3 of his wins in the UFC, Todorovic, they're all by TKO. He's averaging a little over 5.5 significant strikes a minute. The only thing that scares me is he's not that great at stuffing the takedown, but I don't think Duncan has any idea how to take somebody down. He does have one win by submission, but it wasn't due to a takedown. It was due to a knockdown, and he just kind of wore the guy out and was able to get it finished. So in this one, I actually have Todorovic winning by TKO.
Okay, yeah, I guess we both figured, not really sure how Duncan was a favorite in that. So
Yeah, and he's a big favorite too. It kind of surprised me.
Mhm.
All right, so up next we have a featherweight bout between Lerone Murphy and Gabriel Santos. So I will jump in and get this one started. Murphy is definitely a fun fighter to watch. He's 3-0-1 in the UFC. 2 of his wins are by TKO. He does have a 3-fight win streak. That draw was against Takugov, who we talked about a few weeks back, who is no slouch. He can definitely hold his own. Thing about Murphy that really scares me is he is super low output, but he throws with everything he has. I feel like every single time he tries to let his hands go. He's super long for a featherweight. He's got a 73.5-inch reach, which is absolutely huge considering I think he's only 5'8". So he's got an extra 5 inches of reach. Santos, on the other hand, he's won his last 2 fights by TKO. He is undefeated. He does have 3 wins by the rear naked choke. He's got a good gas tank. He's really able to go the distance. 3 of his wins are by decision. But this is a huge step up in competition for him. And I think that's probably going to make a difference. But he's also no slouch at taking people to the ground. And my thing on this one is Murphy's ability to be taken down. I think that's going to actually be the deciding factor. If Americani was able to take him down 5 times, I don't see why Santos isn't able to as well. I actually have Santos winning this one outright. I don't know how it's going to end. I do think he's going to do enough to actually get the win.
Wow, crazy man. Okay. So this is another fight that I'm kind of scratching my head a bit on the matchmaking. Um, because Gabriel Santos, he's making his UFC debut. I do really like him as a prospect. I think for a 26-year-old, he has a really mature and well-rounded game.
Yeah.
Um, if anybody saw his 2 wins in the LFA, they were both electric. He's an
Yep.
undefeated fighter, really exciting, and that's why I don't understand the matchmaking here. Lerone Murphy, I think he's a stud. I think this guy's really good. He's got some solid UFC wins, like you pointed out. I think the most impressive, even though you mentioned that he's not very high output, which is true. He has a win over Douglas Silva de Andrade, who,
Mm-hmm.
the guy's not a champion, but he's like 26-3, and he's been in the UFC forever. So I mean, if you have a win over that guy, like that's just impressive to me. Um, I really want to see Santos do well in the UFC. I think he can do well in the UFC. I think this is a really tough task for a debut fight. So Murphy's toughness, his fight IQ. You mentioned he doesn't have high output, but he's very explosive. I think it's going to be enough for him to get the win.
Okay. All right. And feel like this card we're bouncing back and forth. We're where we normally are, picking opposites almost down the entire line.
Perfect.
All right. So up next, we have a flyweight bout between Mohamed Mokaev and Rafael Filo. Mike, what do you think?
So when I was like looking, kind of researching this fight, I'm very familiar with Muhammad Mokaev, 22-year-old, really exciting prospect. But as I was just kind of looking and thinking about the flyweight division, remember a few years ago when everybody thought the division was just dying, like they were going to fold it, and now all of a sudden it's loaded with absolute savages. It's just it
Yeah.
might be one of the top divisions in terms of like ranked fighters in the UFC. There's just so many solid fighters in the 1 through 15, and Makayev appears to be one of those guys. I think he's a savage. He reminds me a bit in some ways of Dwalishvili in that he
Okay.
has an incredible motor.
Yep.
He's going to take you down at will. The biggest difference between those two guys, though, is that Makayev actually has some pretty slick grappling skills. He's a little bit more
Yeah.
fluid, maybe. I don't know if mobile is the right word when it comes to grappling. He keeps guys down longer, and I know I'm sounding like a broken record here, but like, what is up with this matchmaking? I don't get it. Makayev, he's a Dagestani guy. He fights out of the UK, hence why he's on this card.
Yeah.
I like Filo a lot. He's a really exciting prospect making his UFC debut. I think he brings a lot to the table, which is kind of why I'm like, why are you spoiling his UFC debut against Makayev, who is like a -1,000 favorite, and rightly so. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of ticked off about that. I do have Makayev winning the fight.
Okay. No, and I completely get that. Like, we're getting these young guys that are coming off the contender series and jumping in, and like, this is a major fight. I'm kind of surprised it's so far down on the card. I feel like this should be up a little bit higher, at least pushing the main event of the prelims almost. Like, there's a lot of fireworks in this card. Um, but Makayev, he's a machine, like you said. I feel like I was just going to reiterate everything that you said. He's a machine. He's exactly like Davashvili. I can't say enough. He averages almost 9 takedowns a fight. Like, that's absolutely insane. The only thing I think he's going to have trouble with is keeping Philo on the ground. If he can't keep him on the ground and this ends up in a boxing match, I think he's going to get pieced up and he's probably going to lose. Um, but with that being said, Philo has been able to stop it. He stopped every takedown in his contender series fight. So he does have the ability to kind of stuff the takedown, but Makhayev's on a different level. There's no other way to put it. He's a mixture of Khabib and the ability to take people down, and Merab and his ability to never stop. And I think what ends up happening on this is Mikhaev gets him on the ground. He starts to tire him out sometime in the second round, and he ends up getting a sub. I don't know what round it'll be in, but it'll be second or third round. I think he wins by submission.
Yeah, perfect analysis. And just to add, like, I think this could be, he's minus 1,000. I think this is going to be a fight for like a round or a round and a half, maybe even 2 rounds. There's going to be a lot of bettors that put a lot of money on Makaya that are going to be sweating for a little while. Because I don't
Yes.
think he's going to be necessarily losing, but I don't think he's going to dominate up front, like you said.
No, no, no. I agree. I think he's going to get rocked once or twice, probably early in the fight. And he's going to take it slow for the rest of that round. And once he gets his bearing back, it's going to be kind of bull in the china shop, like we expect. All right. So up next, we have a lightweight battle of Sam Patterson versus Yanal Ashmov. So I'll jump into this one. We got Patterson, another Dana White Contender Series guy. He did win it by submission. He's got 12 professional fights. Only 2 have gone the distance. Of his 10 wins, 5 are by submission, and he loves going for the guillotine. But he is susceptible to getting knocked out. His only loss is by TKO. Ashmov, on the other hand, it's his UFC debut. It seems like we have a lot of that going on tonight against these British guys. He's only gone the distance twice as well. 2 of his 6 wins are by TKO. He did win his only fight in the PFL. So it says a little something about him. He's had some half decent competition, not to say that the PFL's got bad competition. They're a very solid mixed martial arts league. But again, it's not like the UFC. And it's a big step up in competition. So while he is a decent striker, he's got a little bit of power in his hands. I do think Patterson is just a little bit more experienced, and he does end up getting this win.
Okay. Yeah. I think the matchmaking is better here. It's good, thankfully. Patterson is a young, flashy fighter, like he said, coming off that submission win on the Contender Series. Ashmov, a year older at 27, so still pretty young. He has a good deal less MMA experience than Patterson even. I don't really have a lot to say about Ashmov. I mean, my favorite thing about him is that he looks like a Israeli Leo Messi. So I like that, but I don't think he's going to be finding his international glory here. I think Patterson is just going to ride the home canvas advantage here, just come away with a decision win.
All right. So up next, we have a lightweight bout by the other Chris Duncan on the card and Omar Morales. Mike, what do you got?
Well, this Chris Duncan is more exciting, I think. Sorry, Christian Duncan. This one's actually a madman.
He is.
He's really active. I think he's only had one fight go the distance, but really active both in striking and wrestling. One thing I like about Chris Duncan is like his story. And when I say story, I mean like fight history. So he had a couple knockout wins in Bellator, which was nice. Then he made a Contender Series appearance in which he was knocked out. And it's always interesting to see what fighters do after that. So he went on to another, I don't know, smaller promotion, won a fight, and then got a second chance on the Contender Series, and was able to finish his opponent and finally got the contract. So I just think it's a really cool story. Morales, he's a guy who got off to a pretty hot start in the UFC, but he's actually lost 3 of his last 4.
Yep.
My biggest concern and really how I'm kind of picking this fight more so than like a stylistic matchup is that Morales is 37 years old. So if you couple his age with the fact that he's like been on a downslide, I mean, you can be 37 and be like, you know, in peak form, but I don't think that's the case for him. So I don't really have much confidence in him. So I'll take Duncan.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm actually riding the same train. I think Duncan's going to win. I think he's going to get the TKO in this. I think he's just going to overwhelm Morales out the gate. and that age is going to show a little bit. With Morales being on that downswing of his career, I mean, he's on a 2-fight losing streak. Both of them were stoppages. 3-3 overall in the UFC. Super low volume striker, where Duncan's the complete opposite. He's a madman. He comes out swinging. He's swinging for the fences. He wants to end the fight. He doesn't want to be in there. He wants the bonus. And I think he does make quick work out of Morales. I have Duncan TKO. I wouldn't be surprised if it makes it out of the first round. All right, now up, we have a featherweight bout. Jack Shore versus Makwan Amirkhani. On this one, I am going to jump in. So we have Jack Shore, 5-1 in the UFC. He's got 3 decisions, so he can go the distance. A lot of these guys don't do that anymore. They try to get out of the fight early. His only loss in the UFC or overall was to Ricky Simon. He got submitted. Kind of surprising. Ricky Simon, I don't think is that great of a fighter. That's just my opinion. He does like to take the fight to the ground. He averages a little over 3.5 takedowns a fight. And he knows how to control pace on feet. When they're standing up, he controls the pace in the middle of the octagon. As for Amirkhani, he is 7-6 in the UFC. Recently, he's 1-4. He's kind of become the featherweight punching bag for some of these up and coming guys. He's a notable name. Everybody knows it. It looks good when they get a win against a guy who's notable and been around for a while. He's got some pretty horrible takedown defense as well. 38%. I expect this one to kind of get boring about 2 minutes in, and Shore is going to lay on top of him for the majority of the fight. I don't think he's going to get a stoppage. I don't think he's going to submit him. Amirkhani's smooth enough that he's able to survive. He's going to take a beating, though. I think this is just going to be a bloodbath. I got Shore winning by decision.
Okay. Yeah, I think I have the same results. I think I'm a little higher in general on Jack Shore. I think he's fighting a guy in Amirkhani, first of all, who is hanging onto a contract by a thread. You mentioned Shore did lose his last fight against Ricky Simone. It's funny how we have different like viewpoints on that. Like you're like, all right, I think Ricky Simone is actually an excellent fighter. I think he's young. He had a couple losses that like, I think people discounted him pretty quickly on, like Uriah Faber, like knocked him out really quickly, but I like Ricky Simone a lot. So, I don't really take a lot away from Shore for losing that fight. Amirkhani, he's a good wrestler. He's got good submission skills, but his MO is that he oftentimes lets like his opponents bring the fight to him. He's very like defensive and reactive. And I don't think that's going to work against Jack Shore, who's just more talented. And I don't know how he's going to win it. I could totally see it going, like you said, where maybe Shore just kind of safely, grinds out a win or lays on top of him. So I also like Shore to win.
All right. So up next, we have what is probably one of the most interesting fights of the entire night. Middleweight bout between Marvin Vettori and Roman Dolidze. What do you see on this one?
This one was hard to pick, for me at least.
Yeah.
So Vettori, I mean, what can you say about the guy? He's been like solidly in the top 5 at 185 for several years. He's fought all the big names. He's got top level wins against guys like Kevin Holland, Jack Hermanson, Paulo Costa. Vettori, he's a guy who I kind of classify as like a brute in the octagon, who just likes that he can do well at imposing his physicality on his opponents. I don't think he has a tremendous amount of technical ability, but I don't really think he that's what he's trying to do. I think he's just trying to overwhelm his opponents in any way that he can. I think he may have a hard time doing that against Dolidze, who's pretty tough himself. I don't think he's as strong, but he's a tough guy. Dolidze is a guy who, I mean, he's been on fire lately. I think he's like last year he won 3 fights, but also it was in like a span of like 6 months or something. I mean, he was super active. I'm gonna do something crazy here, and a lot of it is just kind of a gut instinct, just kind of looking at it. But I think Dolidze is going to break out, and I actually think he's going to pull off the upset here. So,
All right.
What you got?
So I know we were talking earlier. I told you I had some surprises. That was one of them. I have Delete in this one. I think he's going to win this. I think he's going to win this one handily. I think Vittori, like you said, he likes to throw his body around a little bit. I think of him as more like a Hulk smash type of fighter. It's I'm going to destroy you, and if he doesn't destroy you, he's going to get destroyed. Kind of in the way that Whitaker ate him alive and spit him back out in his last fight. He was completely outclassed in that one, and Vittori's a decent boxer. Dolidze, on the other hand, he's on a 4-fight win streak. His last 3 wins are no slouches. I mean, Kyle Dawkins, Phil Halls, Jack Hermanson, like, that's pretty solid. It doesn't get much tougher than that in the middleweight division. He is lower volume when it comes to a striker, but he's got huge power. Picks his shots well. He knows when to throw heavy. If he gets the fight down on the ground, his ground and pound is almost unmatched in the division. He can submit you too. He's got some decent jiu-jitsu. But when it comes down to it, I think Dolidze is going to get this fight on the ground. As long as he can stay on top and not have the position reversed, he will come out on top. So yeah, we're gonna go Dolidze for the win here.
We both got the shocker. So much for you pulling off that surprise by yourself. I'm with you.
Yeah. So coming up next, we have another women's flyweight fight. This one is Jennifer Maia versus Casey O'Neill. And I will jump into this one. Yeah, Jennifer Maia. I feel like she has been around forever. She's 5-5, 3-2 in her last 5. She does like to keep the fight on its feet in the middle of the octagon. She is not good when she gets on the ground. As for O'Neill, she's a phenomenal prospect so far. I mean, she's 4-0 in the UFC. She's got 2 wins by TKO, a submission. She got a split decision versus Modafferi. I don't know how it was a split decision. She outlanded her. It was like 230 to 110. Yeah, Modafferi had 2 takedowns. She had 1 minute and 6 seconds of ground control time. I don't see how it was a split decision. That's one of those we can never see the judges' cards. Like that's why you need to finish the fight. She's super high volume when it comes to throwing strikes. She has 8.65 significant strikes per minute. And she averages about 2.5 takedowns per fight. And when she's down there, she loves to throw hammer fists. She's trying to get the stoppage via ground and pound. But Maia's a veteran. I don't think her experience is going to outweigh the skill that O'Neill has. I have O'Neill by TKO.
Okay. Yeah. Maia, like you said, veteran. I think she's one of the toughest female mixed martial artists out there. She's tough. She's strong mentally and physically. The problem is like when you're analyzing a fighter and like the first thing you point to or like their greatest thing that you point to is like toughness. It's not usually a good sign, right? You want to talk about like their skills and everything. And I'm not saying Maia isn't skilled. That's not the case. She just usually she's comfortable with those like grinding, grueling fights. She has a tendency to win those type of fights. So, in terms of her path to victory, I can see Maia winning if and only if she was able to like somehow just smother up O'Neill and not give her any room to work. And if O'Neill can avoid that, I think she'll just prove too much to handle. Like you said, I mean, O'Neill, her volume is kind of unheard of in the women's divisions. She's got so much that she throws out there. Part of it is probably that she's young. She's got that going for her, and Maia is not young. I think there's a big advantage just in athleticism, in skill set. O'Neill likes to employ her wrestling to look for ground and pound. I actually think she's not going to try that a whole lot here. I think she's going to kind of go the route that she went against Modafferi, mainly because Maia, she's not the greatest, grappler, but she's strong. And I think O'Neill knows that she has a big advantage in the striking department. So I think she'll probably try to keep it standing up. So ultimately, Maia doesn't have enough to keep up with O'Neill. I'll take O'Neal as well.
Okay. All right. Now we're up to what is probably going to be the most disappointing fight of the night. Gunnar Nelson versus Brian Barberena. Mike, what do you think?
So both of these guys have been around the block for a while. I like the matchmaking. I'll say that. Um, Nelson is pretty much a one trick pony, but that one trick, his grappling, he's pretty damn good at it.
He is.
Um, and Bam Bam, on the other hand, he doesn't have much time for anything other than, you know, striking and banging. That's what he likes to do.
Yep.
So I sometimes these matchups, even though I think you're probably right, it's likely to be a boring fight. Sometimes these matchups are always interesting because like you're looking at it and you're like, they're so different. Like, which guy can best impose their style? That's always the question. So the answer to that question for me is I think Gunny is going to be the guy who successfully does it. I think he'll win by sub, but like you said, I just don't see it being very exciting.
All right. So we're actually on opposite sides on this one. I do think Bam Bam is going to pull this one out. Uh kind of wish this was still a Derek Rodriguez Gunnar Nelson fight. Be a lot more fun to talk about. But we have to go with what happens. And in this one, Nelson's been around for a long time. Like you said, he is kind of a one trick pony. He gets you on the mat and he's going to keep you there. He's going to go for the submission. He's probably going to get it. Barberena, on the other hand, I think he's just going to go crazy. Especially recently, he's shown the ability to land a lot of strikes. I feel like he's kind of just been the guy that they've thrown up against long time welterweights to kind of finish them off, like send them off on their last hurrah. Because he beat Robbie Lawler pretty bad. Did the same thing to Matt Brown. I mean, he was taken down 5 times versus Matt Brown, but Matt Brown could take just about anybody down in the division. In this one, though, I do think Barberena is going to keep this on the feet. I think even though his takedown defense is not that great, I think he should be able to kind of shut her away from it just because he knows it's coming. There's a reason why Nelson's 9-5 in the UFC. Everybody knows it's coming. Obviously, he's 9-5, so he's able to get it done. But I think Barberena is coming into this one looking to keep himself in the mix and get a couple more big time fights. I do think he wins this one, most likely by decision.
Okay, well, you're wrong. So there's that.
It's nice to be wrong sometimes.
There you go.
All right. So up next, we have another super exciting fight, actually. A lightweight bout between Justin Gaethje and Rafael Fiziev. Mike, what do you think?
Yes, and something would have to have gone horribly wrong for this not to be the most exciting fight of the night for as long as it lasts. Um, unless both these guys somehow stunningly fight like completely unlike how they usually do, this fight is guaranteed to finish inside the distance, in my opinion. So I saw and see that Fiziev is a favorite here, and he seems to be getting a lot of hype. I get it. He's flashy. He's got some nice knockout wins. On the other side, we know Gaethje is a madman as well in there. This is likely to be a stand-up war. I really don't understand how Fiziev is around minus 250. I don't know how that's a thing. Look, I'm not going to argue that Gaethje is good defensively. He's not. That being said, he is a much smarter fighter now than when he first joined the UFC. If you remember, he literally he was like Pac-Man. He wanted to eat every single punch thrown his way.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, again, he's still not great defensively, but he's a little bit better with it. Fiziev will look to work a bit more at range. Gaethje likes to get in there, get in the pocket, throw his hands. So I think Gaethje is going to catch Fiziev with a big punch and drop him. Hasn't Fiziev been dropped before also? So it's not like unprecedented.
Mm-hmm.
So I have Gaethje. I have Gaethje winning this one.
Oh, I actually have Gaethje winning this one as well. I think his 6-4 record in the UFC is absolutely amazing considering the murderer's row of lightweights he's fought. You got Michael Johnson, Eddie Alvarez, Dustin Poirier, Edison Barboza, Cowboy Cerrone, Tony Ferguson, Khabib, Michael Chandler, Charles Oliveira. Like, if you go 6-4 against them, you got something going for you.
That's great. Yes.
Like, that's phenomenal. You got a bunch of former champions just scattered all throughout that list. He could box with anybody. So can Fiziev. This one was really tough to pick. I mean, Fizie's on a 6-fight win streak. He lost his UFC debut and then just kind of took off from there. He learned a little bit. It is a huge step up in competition for him, though. He has not fought anybody of the likes of Justin Gaethje. I don't think he's fought anybody with the power that Justin Gaethje possesses. And I think I agree with you completely. I have Gaethje. They get into a little slugfest, and as everybody knows, Gaethje will take all the punches in the world and still keep throwing them right back with no caution to the wind whatsoever. He's going to try to knock your head off in one shot, especially if he gets rocked a couple times. And I expect it to happen. They're going to keep this fight on the feet, even though Gaethje was a good wrestler at one point in life. He was no slouch at all. He just does not take the fight to the ground. I think they're both going to stand, and I think Gaethje's ability to just consistently throw his hands for 3 full rounds when he's gone 5 full rounds plenty of times is going to be the big difference. His gas tank is what's going to win this one for him. So we got Gaethje winning this one outright. And now we move on to the main event of the evening, the welterweight battle for the championship between Leon Edwards and Kamaru Usman. Mike, what do you think about this one?
Yeah. So respect to the champ, right? His KO over win over
Oh, yeah.
Usman in the last matchup was their second matchup, by the way.
Yeah.
That was legendary. So these guys are now 1-1. I think it's also pretty safe to say nobody saw that coming in the last fight based on how the fight was playing out. And I'm going to say it. I'm going to be that guy. I don't care. That was a really well-timed shot by Edwards, but it was quite lucky. Anything can happen in the octagon. We see that every single week.
Mm-hmm.
But nobody can convince me overall that Usman is a much better fighter. He was ahead on everyone's scorecard in the last fight, entering the 5th round. And even now, right, looking at it, it says a lot that Usman is a minus 250 favorite. I think the only reason he's not a bigger favorite is Edwards is getting some respect as the champ, and he's fighting in his home country. I like him. I like Edwards. He's got some good boxing skills. It won't be enough. It just won't. Usman, not only is he going to get a win, like I'm going to go out and say it, he's going to make a huge statement against Edwards to prove that last win that Edwards has was a fluke. I think Usman is going to dominate all over this fight and probably win by TKO.
Okay. I was not expecting that. I all respect to the champ, like you said, but it's the same thing with Usman. I mean, he is 15-1 in the UFC. Dude, he's a machine. He is the guy whose gas tank doesn't run out. And it wasn't running out in that fight. It was Edwards noticed at some point during the 4th round that when he feigned that left punch, that left straight, he could throw the left foot with it and absolutely rock Usman. It was the perfect timed kick, probably the most perfect timed kick in the history of the UFC. There's no other way to look at it. He was down on all the cards. He was down 4 rounds to none on all the cards. He was absolutely getting dominated. The only thing that surprised me was Leon Edwards took Kamaru Usman down to the mat, which has never happened. So he figured something out with kind of breaking into Usman's head a little bit. Well, maybe he can take me down. Maybe he does have a little something on me that nobody else has ever had. I am almost certain that thought went out of Usman's head the second he got into camp this time around. I don't see this one going any other way than Usman picking him apart in the center of the octagon. He's going to hit him once. Edwards is going to back up a little bit, and I think Usman's going to shoot, get him on the ground. He's going to stay there for the rest of that round. I think it's going to be insanely dominating. I don't think it's going to be a TKO. That is not Usman's calling card. He is a guy that grinds this out to the finish. He likes to just suffocate his opponents, take their will away, and make them not want to fight ever again. So I got Usman winning this one by decision.
All right, we're on the same side there. Unfortunately, yeah, respect to Edwards. It's just I don't see it. I kind of wish you saw something different, but we are in agreement there.
We are. Oh, surprising enough that on a main event we actually agree, which means Leon Edwards is going to
Dominate,
come out and still be the UFC welterweight champion of the world. That seems like that's how it always works in these situations. But other than that, we have a really great card to look forward to this weekend. It's an early card. Make sure you're home around 1 p.m. Eastern time to get this card started. But that is it for us here with the Octagon Daddies. Again, I'm Dave. He's Mike. Enjoy the card. We hope you enjoyed our analysis, and we'll see y'all next week.
thanks, guys.